He never loved me. I can tell you that right now, the way one loves. He loved in his own way, which is not too good. And so he had no respect for me.
Angie Dickinson. The name alone conjures images of a legendary blonde bombshell who lit up Hollywood with a charm that was impossible to ignore. For decades, she was the fantasy of millions, the tough-as-nails sergeant in Policewoman, and the smoldering love interest to icons like Frank Sinatra and John Wayne. But behind that dazzling smile and those famously insured legs was a private world of professional betrayals, personal heartbreaks, and bitter struggles. For years, the real stories of her most challenging relationships were kept under wraps, hidden by the polished image of old Hollywood. But let's be honest, hate is a powerful word. It suggests a finality that doesn't quite capture the messy, complicated truth. For Angie Dickinson, the story is far more complex. It's a tale not just of simple hatred, but of challenging and formative relationships with men who tried to control her, betrayed her trust, or caused her deep, lasting pain. These are the men who, through infidelity, disrespect, or manipulation, left the biggest scars. In this video, we're uncovering the untold stories of the 6 men who caused Angie Dickinson the most strife and heartbreak. The men she had every reason to walk away from secret affairs to public humiliations. You're about to see a side of this Hollywood legend you've never seen before. Coming in at number 6 is the man who gave Angie Dickinson her big break but also taught her a brutal first lesson about the cold, transactional nature of Hollywood. The legendary director, Howard Hawks. Hawks was a titan of the industry, the genius behind classics like His Girl Friday and The Big Sleep. In 1959, he cast Dickinson opposite John Wayne in Rio Bravo, the very role that catapulted her to stardom. On set, he was a powerful mentor, and the film was a massive success. It should have been the start of a long and loyal partnership. Instead, it became Angie's first taste of feeling like a commodity, a piece of property to be bought and sold. After Rio Bravo, Dickinson likely felt she had found a professional home with Hawks. He was famous for creating strong, witty, female characters. The Hawksian woman, and Angie embodied that spirit perfectly. She was smart, tough, and could go toe-to with any leading man. She trusted him, but in old Hollywood, trust was a luxury. In a 2023 interview, Dickinson casually mentioned the shocking event that followed. Without her knowledge, Hawks sold her contract to Warner Brothers. For him, it was just business. For her, it was a profound betrayal. She wasn't just an artist, he was mentoring. She was an asset he had cashed in on. This single act shaped her understanding of the industry's power dynamics. It taught her that a director's favor could be temporary, and that her career was often in the hands of powerful men. While Dickinson never went on public tirades against Hawks, the incident instilled in her a deep wariness of the studio system. It was a cold, hard education in her own disposability and a quiet betrayal that would inform her approach to Hollywood from that day forward. At number 5, we find a different kind of heartbreak, one born not from Hollywood power plays, but from the quiet disappointment of a first love that just wasn't meant to last. This was her relationship with her first husband, Gene Dickinson. He was a handsome college football star, and for a young Angeline Brown, he seemed to represent a fresh start. She met him when she was just 18, and they married in 1952. She took his name, which she would carry for the rest of her iconic career. But the marriage itself was not destined for the long haul. Their story started like a classic American romance, the popular athlete and the bright, ambitious young woman. But the foundation of their union was complicated. Angie has admitted that a major motivation for marrying Gene was to escape a difficult home life, particularly with her father, who struggled with alcoholism. Gene offered a sense of stability. They married just 10 months after they started dating, but this whirlwind romance soon gave way to the reality of a mismatched partnership. There was no big, scandalous affair that ended their marriage. Instead, it was a slow, creeping realization that their worlds were drifting apart. As Angie's career began to ignite in the mid-1950s, she was being courted by studios, while Gene was in the electronics business, a world away from the Hollywood glamour. They separated in 1956 and divorced in 1960. Angie later reflected on the split with regret, not bitterness, calling Gene a grand guy but admitting, "We were a wrong twosome." She even took responsibility for the pain the divorce caused him, calling it one of the lowest points in her life. Gene represents the ghost of a more conventional life for Angie, a path she briefly walked before her ambition led her elsewhere. Coming in at number 4 is a man so monumental, he was practically a walking American landmark, John Wayne. Their collaboration on Rio Bravo was a huge success. The 1959 film made Dickinson a star, and their on-screen chemistry is still electric. Publicly, Angie has always been overwhelmingly positive about Wayne, calling him adorable, generous, and patient. He, in turn, called her one of the best actresses he'd ever worked with. But behind the glowing press quotes, there was a fundamental clash of Arusa friction between old Hollywood masculinity and a new kind of female star, John Wayne. The Duke was the undisputed king of westerns and a symbol of rugged, traditional, American manhood. He was more than 2 decades older than Dickinson and came from a generation with very different views. While Dickinson was sharp and independent, she was still a young actress working opposite the biggest star in the world. In one speech, she laughingly acknowledged that he had a little patron in him. The tension wasn't about open hostility, but this generational and cultural divide. Angie has admitted she was hesitant to get too close to him, fearing they would clash over their different political views. Their dynamic was a perfect example of a changing Hollywood. He was the past, a towering figure of patriarchal authority. She was the future, a woman who expected to be treated as a peer. So while she clearly admired him, the dynamic with Wayne represents a professional challenge Dickinson had to navigate. Working with him made her a star, but it also reinforced that to succeed, she'd constantly have to prove she was more than what powerful men saw on the surface. Before we get to our top 3, we're diving into the relationships that truly defined Angie's personal struggles, marked by infidelity and devastating emotional pain. These are the stories that have been whispered about for decades. If you're fascinated by the hidden truths of Hollywood's golden age, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. For the third most difficult man in Angie Dickinson's life, we have to go back to the very beginning, to a figure who shaped her entire path long before Hollywood came calling. Her father, Leo Henry Brown, he was a small-town newspaper publisher and the man who first introduced her to movies as the local theater's projectionist. But he was also the source of a turbulent home life that Angie felt a desperate need to escape. The core of the family's trouble was Leo's struggle with alcoholism. Living in that environment was incredibly difficult for a young Angie. In fact, she later admitted that her primary motivation for marrying her first husband, Gene Dickinson, at such a young age, was to get out of her parents' house and away from the chaos. This wasn't a story of Hollywood drama, but of deep, foundational pain. The need to flee a difficult home life pushed her into an early marriage that ultimately wasn't right for her, setting the stage for future heartaches. While she pursued a life of glamour and fame, the memory of her father's struggles and the unstable environment he created represents the first major hurdle she had to overcome. It was a private battle that predated her public ones, a painful family dynamic that she had to leave behind to become the strong, independent woman the world would come to know. This relationship stands as a testament to the personal demons she had to conquer on her way to becoming a star. At number 2 is the man Angie Dickinson herself has called the love of my life, Frank Sinatra. Their on-again, off-again romance spanned decades and was the stuff of Hollywood legend. They were electric on-screen in Ocean's 11, and their off-screen connection was just as powerful. So why is the great love of her life so high on this list? Because sometimes, the deepest love comes with the most painful choices. Theirs was a passionate, all-consuming affair, but it was also a relationship with an impossible dynamic that ultimately forced Angie to walk away, to save herself. They met in 1953, and the attraction was immediate. By 1964, they were on the verge of getting married, but Angie pumped the brakes. She knew that being Mrs. Frank Sinatra wasn't a role she could play. In a candid interview, she explained, "I didn't want him to ask me to marry him, because I didn't want to say no to Frank Sinatra." The reasons were crystal clear. Sinatra's lifestyle was a whirlwind of late nights and a volatile temper, completely at odds with the life Angie wanted. Marrying him would have meant giving up her autonomy, something she had fought her entire career to protect. The heartbreak here wasn't from malice, but from love itself. It was the painful realization that the person you adore is also the one person you can't build a stable life with. She had to choose between the man she loved and her own independence. Walking away from the love of your life creates its own special kind of Agania wound that never truly closes. Their story is a Hollywood tragedy, a perfect romance that could only exist in fleeting moments, but never survived the harsh light of day. We've arrived at number 1. This story moves beyond professional frustrations into the devastatingly personal realm of marriage and profound betrayal with the man Angie Dickinson, married in 1965. The celebrated composer, Bert Beck. To the world, they were a glamorous power couple. But behind closed doors, their marriage was crumbling under the weight of infidelity, emotional distance, and an unbearable family tragedy. In a stunningly candid 2019 interview, Dickinson gave a blunt and painful assessment of their marriage. When asked if Bacharach loved her, she responded, "He never loved me. I can tell you that right now, the way one loves. He loved in his own way, which is not too good. And, so, he had no respect for me." This lack of respect manifested most painfully in Bacharach's infidelity, which he later admitted to in his own memoir. The deepest pain in their marriage, however, was connected to their daughter, Nikki, who was born 3 months premature in 1966 and had lifelong health struggles, including Asperger's syndrome. Raising a child with such profound challenges is an immense strain, but for Angie, it was a battle she often felt she was fighting alone. While she dedicated herself to Nick's care, often leaving the set of Policewoman early to be home, Bacharach was frequently distant. The loneliness of this period was immense. As she cared for her child while her husband was emotionally and physically unavailable, they separated for 5 years before their official divorce in 1981. The betrayal wasn't just the affairs, it was the emotional abandonment during the most vulnerable time of her life. He was the man who gave her a daughter she adored, but also the one who inflicted a unique and devastating pain. The sorrow was cemented by the ultimate tragedy when Nikki died by suicide in 2007 at the age of 40. This cemented the Bacharach years as a period of profound and inconsolable heartbreak for Dickinson. From the cold business of a contract sale to the devastating heartbreak of an unfaithful husband, the story of Angie Dickinson is so much more than a highlight reel of Hollywood glamour. It's a testament to a woman's resilience in an industry and an era that often sought to control her. The men on this list represent a spectrum of challenges she was forced to endure: the patronizing icon, the impossible love, and the distant husband. Each relationship, in its own way, tested her spirit. And yet, Angie Dickinson was never just a victim. She was a survivor. She navigated the treacherous waters of fame with a grace and intelligence that allowed her to walk away from even the love of her life to preserve her own identity. She endured the quiet heartbreak of a failed marriage and the painful betrayal of another, emerging, not unscathed, but unbroken. Her story is a powerful reminder that behind every dazzling Hollywood smile lies a human being, with battles fought, pains endured, and a strength forged in the very fires that were meant to consume them. What do you think of these untold stories? Which of these difficult relationships do you find the most shocking? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the true stories behind the legends of Hollywood.